Okie dokie, we're going to end this, and I apologize that some of these videos have been really long, but we're going to stop talking about the amendments here with the last section on the amendments, and we're going to try to fly through this as best I can. Some of these things are not very economic, but we're going to mention them anyhow. We already talked about the 16th Amendment, which says the income tax is okay. And it's not just the income tax that allows. The 16th Amendment allows us to have the Social Security tax and the Medicare tax. Lots of other taxes we have are based on the 16th Amendment. 17th Amendment, we've also already talked about. It's one of the progressive amendments. So is the 16th as a progressive era amendment. The 17th is a progressive era amendment, and it says that senators were originally picked by the state legislatures. Now, since the 1920s, it took years, obviously, for this completely to take over the world. So about 1920 is when we get the first Senate that's completely been picked by the people. Most of you probably wouldn't like 18. 18 is the Prohibition Amendment, which is also a progressive amendment. It's the progressive people who put forward this. They believed in it. It said you can't have alcohol. So we get Al Capone and all of the evil people out there spreading illegal alcohol around because we ban alcohol. You should know that economists don't think these things ever work. Economists believe, for example, most economists, that the way to deal with the drug problem isn't to go after the drug addicts. It's to help cure the drug addicts and criminalize the people who are the pushers and the makers and the users, but not criminalize the people who are simply using it. It's not economic to go after the folks who are on the heroin. It's more economic to get rid of their addiction, but not put them in jail. It's very expensive to put all those drug people in jail. Most people in America in jail are nonviolent drug offenders. Economists think that's stupid. Get them off of drugs, keep them in the workforce, get the bad people who are behind the whole thing. So we would never think that prohibition would work. No economist would ever tell you that prohibition would work or that we're going to win the war on drugs someday. We're not, at least not the way we fight it. 19th Amendment, women can vote. And again, remember, this is another progressive legislation. Women get the right to vote. A lot of people on the far right write books about how bad the progressive movement is, but women get the right to vote. A lot of states allowed women to vote at the time, but not all. So the 19th Amendment says all women across the United States have the right to vote. Okay? And economists believe, and the United Nations will tell you, for example, that the biggest thing that gets in the way of countries trying to develop economically and become economic powers is the fact that women are not treated equally with men in the world. And we would be way better off, according to the United Nations and pretty much every economist, if we actually had equality for women in all that we do. Women don't get equal pay for equal work. Women just not treated the same as men. And there are severe economic consequences because of that. Okay? All discrimination leads to significant economic consequences. It means you're not putting the best person in the best spot. You're picking the best person who's white, male, to put in the best spot, not the best person in total. The 20th Amendment's boring. It switches the inauguration of the president from March to January, so it's less of a lame duck. Between November and January is the only time when the president doesn't really, we're in that transition as opposed to being from November till March. And it tells us what to do if we have a dead president or no president. So, yeah, we don't use it very often. 21st Amendment, party. We get alcohol back. We rescind the 18th. All it says is pretend there's no 18th Amendment. And now you can drink again. The Prohibition period was really good for Mexico because people who lived across the border could just drive across the border and party in Mexico. The 21st Amendment is going to be bad economically for Mexico because now people in America can stay in America. 22nd Amendment, we've already talked about, limits the President of the United States to 2 terms. It's a reaction to Franklin Roosevelt getting elected 4 times, where George Washington didn't ever get elected, but he was President of the United States for 2 terms, and then he walked away. And everybody else, up to Franklin Roosevelt, followed in George Washington's footsteps. The 23rd says that Washington, D.C. voters get to pick electors and are part of the Electoral College. So Washington, D.C. all of a sudden gets to elect people, though they don't live in a state. Washington, D.C. is not a part of a state. They don't live in a state. Their vote for president counts. Puerto Rico, Guam, Samoa, there's lots of American citizens out there who have full rights. They're full American citizens, but their votes don't count. Puerto Rico has voted several times that they want to be a state. It's an interesting question, and because of the hurricane, we've had a lot of discussions lately about Puerto Rico, but UNLV had a great volleyball player, was from Puerto Rico. 6'5", she was great. But anyway, why do we treat Puerto Rico, Guam, Samoa, those kinds of places differently than we treat Washington, D.C., or differently than we treat other citizens? Okay, good question. 24th, you can't have a poll tax. So one way to stop poor people from voting is put a tax on voting, right? If you only want higher income people to vote, or you want to discriminate against black folks in a quasi-legal way, you put a tax on voting. So you have to pay $5 to vote. The richer you are, the more likely you are to vote then. The 24th Amendment gets rid of poll taxes, says you cannot charge someone for exercising their right to vote. They don't have to pay for it. The 25th Amendment is the Presidential Disability and Succession Act. We had some people who worked for the FBI who claimed that they were jokingly talking about using this. It lets the president be removed from office if they're unable to carry out the duties of the office, and it sets up the line of succession, or allows Congress to set up the line of succession. So if you know your history, you know that when George W. Bush was president, for example, he referred to Nancy Pelosi as 3. He called her 3, didn't call her Nancy or Pelosi, he called her 3, because George W. Bush was first in line to be president. His vice president, Dick Cheney, was second in line to be president, and Nancy Pelosi was 3rd. So he called her 3. There's a line of succession then. It goes Speaker of the House, up to, and Congress can set the succession line. 26th Amendment, 18-year-olds can vote. So remember that Civil War amendments, if you were 21, you had the right to vote. It didn't stop a state from letting 18-year-olds vote, but required 21 and above. The 26th Amendment says 18-year-olds and above can always vote in every state. 27th Amendment took 203 years to pass. It took 74,000 days to pass. But it limits congressional pay raises. They can't raise their own pay. So James Madison proposed it as part of the original Bill of Rights. It never passed. It passed in 1972. So it was proposed in the 1700s, sat out there. They didn't put a time limit on it, so it sat out there forever and took 203 years before it passed in 1972. Now there's one more amendment. I said there are 27, but there's one more that's hanging out there that Congress did put a time limit on. Modern amendments, Congress puts a time limit on, and if they don't pass by the time limit, then they kind of go into limbo. It's not that they're gone, they kind of go into limbo. So we have the ERA. It needs to be ratified by 38 states, and 37 have ratified it. However, its time expired. And the reason that Nevada and Illinois are in a different color on this map is that technically they ratified it after its expiration date. So you can see it's the Equal Rights Amendment, says you can't discriminate on the basis of gender. The whole Deep South said, no, we ain't passing that. Arizona and Utah said, no, we ain't passing that. Every other state in the United States has passed the Equal Rights Amendment, but its time has expired. So for it to pass now, probably Congress would have to reinitialize it. There's debate over whether those 37 existing votes still count or not. One state voted to take back its vote, but there's a legal question about whether or not you can take back your vote. The theory being, if they can do that, then the Civil War amendments might get unratified by the South. They might vote to get rid of the anti-discrimination laws and allow discrimination to be legal again. So there's all these questions, but the ERA, what should happen is some president should come in, get Congress to resend it out, try to get everything to count. Okay? So what we're going to go do now is not in this video, but what we need to go do now is talk about Constitution of the state of Nevada.